We all know Notre Dame's going to try to pound the rock. That's no secret. But Mario Cristobal revealed the other possible advantages that the Hurricanes need to take away from the Irish.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about the so-called expert picks and predictions heading into Miami hosting Notre Dame this Sunday in primetime. I cannot wait. Now, one of those experts, Paul Feinbaum, has a guarantee on how this game is going to finish. We'll break that down and so much more. We'll talk about Miami's roster because Mario Cristobal pointed out that there are still some competitions, some depth chart spots, I don't know, maybe even some starting spots that are still up for grabs between now and Sunday. We'll take a look at what those might be. Now, in terms of possible advantages that Notre Dame has in this game, and this is all on paper, of course, because these are things Miami's going to try to take away. One of those advantages that they might have, which is, I think, an advantage that Notre Dame would have probably against any program in the country, comes with their elite running back duo. Jordan Love and Jadarian Price, arguably the best running back tandem in America. And we know that in this specific case, with the Irish breaking in a new starting quarterback, redshirt freshman CJ Carr, who has zero collegiate starts, zero collegiate snaps, I think, under his belt, that their game plan is going to be to take as much pressure away from him as possible. How do you do that? You run the football effectively. That's something Miami is going to try to take away. So you have to hope the teeth of Miami's defense, the Hurricanes front seven, and it starts right in the middle with Justin Scott, who, you know, he's going to play a lot. Maybe he'll be making his first collegiate start, the former five-star recruit. Ahmad Moten, who has experience at Miami. David Blay, who's got a lot of college football experience, who transferred in. Of course, Miami's edge rushers are going to try to get to the quarterback when Notre Dame does drop back. Hopefully you can make CJ Carr's debut as difficult as possible. And Miami's linebacking core, with an addition like Mohamed Toure, who's got a lot of range, they're going to need to slow down that running game as much as possible. But outside of that one, which is so obvious, because every single person who's breaking down this game is pointing out, and rightfully pointing out, man, Jordan Love, Jadarian Price, is Miami going to be able to slow those guys down? Are they going to combine for 250 yards? Like, you know, that's probably the one of the first, if not the very first talking point heading into this football game. But Mario Cristobal revealed a couple of other things. So he had his pregame news conference on Monday, and he spoke very candidly when asked about Notre Dame and the challenge that Miami has in front of them this Sunday. And Cristobal pointed out they got to the national championship, and the way they got there was probably the most impressive thing, he said, because the resilience needed to overcome the early season loss, which was the Northern Illinois game, like they did, and going, I believe, 10-week, 12-week winning spree is impressive, Cristobal said. And they did it with physicality, playing violent football, playing team football, which, side note, we know Miami wants to do that. But they have dynamic players everywhere, and they've made people pay the price, Cristobal said. Now, here to me was the extra interesting part of this Cristobal quote. He continued, they played very complimentary football. They led the country in forcing turnovers. They led the country in blocked kicks, and their conversion rate of those turnovers and blocks have been off the charts. All right, so that's something to focus on. And you guys maybe remember, I think it was last week when we had Brian Smith on from the Portal podcast. We were talking a little bit about this game, and he knows Notre Dame very well. He knows their roster frontwards and backwards. And like he pointed out to us here on Locked On Canes that he is not sure if Miami's special teams are going to hold up against the Irish. And that's not just about the kicking game. And Cristobal had an update on the kickers. We'll get to that. I'm going to circle that point and return to that. But when you talk about things like kickoff coverage, punt coverage, those were areas Miami struggled last year. The Hurricanes surrendered 2 kickoff returns to the house last season. That plays right into Notre Dame's wheelhouse. That's one of their superpowers, is changing games on special teams. So Miami's kickoff coverage needs to be much improved. And I also hope that for whichever of Miami's 2 kickers is handling the kickoff duties, I think it's probably going to be Carter Davis, the FAU transfer, because he's the one with like the longer leg, probably a kickoff specialist. Please put as many of those through the back of the end zone as possible, because we don't want to give Notre Dame the opportunity to, pick up 40, 50 yards, or God forbid, take a kickoff return to the touchdown. That's the last thing we need, because, hey, one of the advantages that I think Miami is going to have, I know people laugh about attendance and they belittle the Miami fan base every chance they get, but we know Hard Rock Stadium is going to be a party this weekend. It's going to be crazy, right? The way that it was crazy in 2017, that clip is going around the web of former Notre Dame quarterback Ian Book, who, was completely rattled in that game because he said it, the loudest stadium he's ever played in. The guys played at the Big House in Michigan in front of 100,000 plus fans. Hard Rock Stadium on that November night in 2017 was the loudest freaking game that he ever played in. Let's recreate that, please. So that's a possible advantage Miami can have from that 12th man at Hard Rock. But we all know there are certain plays you can surrender that's going to take some of the energy out of that crowd. I mean, the energy was great in 2017. Didn't Miami jump out to a 26-0 lead in that game? So that fed into the energy. One of the best ways, or in our case, the worst ways, to suck the energy out of a 65,000 plus crowd is to surrender a kickoff return for a touchdown. So special teams need to be on point. And yeah, Carson Beck needs to take care of the football. Miami's running backs, please do not fumble. Miami's receivers, please do not drop passes the way Beck's receivers in Georgia did last year. It's forcing turnovers. That's a superpower of Notre Dame's defense. And former Notre Dame quarterback Malik Zaire has been writing a lot of X posts about this game. He's surprise, he's predicting a double-digit victory for the Irish. But Malik Zaire said, Notre Dame game plan versus Miami. Obviously, run, and let CJ throw it down the field a few times for explosive plays, couple rollouts, couple screens. Defensively, he says, pressure Beck and let him be who he is, throwing us a couple picks. ND wins by 2 scores. Miami goes back to crying all season long, he said. Now, okay, I love how people have put that label on Carson Beck. That's who he is. He's a turnover machine, right? The guy's interception prone. Well, yeah. So Carson Beck last season, 2024 in Georgia, he threw a dozen interceptions. It's too many, okay? Threw a dozen interceptions in a year when his wide receiver core led the season in drops, when his team's rushing offense, running the football, was ranked worse than 100th in America, and the pass protection was not up to Georgia standards. Now, the year prior to 2024, 2023, when he had weapons that weren't dropping the football, he had superior pass protection and a running game that was up to Georgia standards. Beck threw 6 interceptions, right? 12 INTs last year, way too many. 6 interceptions the year before, we would absolutely take that from a Miami starting quarterback. In fact, any team in the country would take just 6 interceptions for their starting quarterback. So I love how people seem to think that 12 interceptions, that's who Carson Beck is. What if it's not? What if who Carson Beck is was 6 interceptions the year prior? And again, I'm not saying Miami's offense is perfect. They did have the number 1 offense in the country last year. Pass protection should be really, really good with that Miami Hurricanes offensive line. The receivers and tight ends have been making plays in practice. And again, I feel really good about Miami's running back trio with Mark Fletcher, Shamar Brown, Jordan Lyle, who had his breakout as a true freshman and I think can break out even further this year now that he's added weight and power to go with his speed and explosiveness. So you think that's who Carson Beck is? I don't. And yeah, him taking care of the football is going to be a major emphasis. So, folks, those are a couple of other areas to look for. Notre Dame, really solid on special teams. really solid defensively in taking the football away. Now, on the flip side, Corey Heatherman, Miami's defensive coordinator, takeaways is his obsession. That's something that Minnesota did effectively when they had a top 10 defense in every metric, top 5 in some metrics. He's going to try to transform Miami's defense into that, swarming to the football. And Coach Heatherman had mentioned that trying to defend our offense in practice is a nightmare. So Miami's offense has continued to play really well, even going from Cam Ward to Carson Beck at quarterback. And Miami is going to try to take away some of those extra advantages that Notre Dame has. But let's hear more when we come back from what Mario Cristobal had to say on Monday, including roster competitions ongoing into the first game and possibly beyond the first game. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. My friends, today, August 26th, is finally here. FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You want to take that flyer on Tua Tagovailoa to win MVP this year? Today is the day to lock that in. You want to crown your Super Bowl champion in August. You think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win it again? You want to parlay your division winner dark horses? Lock those in today, folks. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets right now, because Futures Day today is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Hey, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. And thank you for helping us out. All right, so we are 5 days away from game day. I think I nailed that. Here's Mario Cristobal on Carson Beck's leadership in a big game. Because, again, remember, we've got a contrast in the quarterbacks. I know Notre Dame fans will tell you, well, we know who Carson Beck is. He's a turnover machine. Whereas CJ Carr, this guy is dominating in practice, whatever they have to say. But obviously, Miami has a big-time experience advantage with their signal callers, a guy who's 24-3 as an SEC starter versus a guy who is 0-0 on the other side. Cristobal said, I think when you look at our team, the makeup of our team, particularly the guy snapping the football to the guy giving snap to the guy behind him, to the middle of our defense, the defensive tackles, the linebackers, the safeties, the core of our team has experience, he said. And we feel that when you have the type of game experience those guys have, the big moments don't faze you. They came here to Miami to have that opportunity. And Carson, of course, has been in a bunch of those. So he's had a great camp, Cristobal said. He doesn't stop preparing like the rest of the team. The culture fit has been perfect with Carson. So really all of his focus is on preparation at the highest level that he can do it. Okay. And then, of course, I'm not ruling out on the flip side. I think Carson Beck is going to play well in this game. It's going to be difficult because Notre Dame, Christian Gray back there in their defensive secondary, they've got one of, again, this is all on paper, week 1, but they've got one of the best defensive secondary rooms in America on paper. So it's not going to be easy. That's why I think both teams are going to try to run the football effectively. Miami, with their big offensive line, is going to try to lean on Notre Dame's very good defensive line and open up yardage and opportunities for Fletcher, Lyle, and Marty Brown. But, Miami, you have an experienced quarterback who's been in bigger games than this one, you could argue. CJ Daniels, a 6-year guy out of the SEC. I think you're going to count on him to make plays. And I think you're really going to count on the possible safety valve that Elijah Lofton is going to create at tight end. Again, with the young receivers, we're going to see these guys get on the field, right? Whether they start or not, I think we're going to see some reps in this game from Malachi Toney, from Josh Moore as true freshmen. We'll see other experienced guys. I'm sure Ray Joseph is going to play quite a bit in this game. Tony Johnson, experienced guy from Cincinnati. So, Miami's going to have a mix of experience and inexperience at receiver, but I wonder in a game like this against a defensive secondary like that, if you might lean a little bit more on the experienced players in the passing game. I guess the truth will be told come 7:30 on Sunday night. And as we talked about this with Larry Bluestein yesterday, first game of the season, when you're playing big boy football, like you're not opening against FAMU, not opening against Bethune-Cookman. When you're playing a game like this, it's really hard to prognosticate since we haven't seen either of these two teams play since last year, and neither of these teams are the same as they were a year ago. But here's Mario Cristobal on his team's depth, his roster. I don't think you're ever all the way there, he said, but certainly we've made a ton of progress. We feel a lot better about it. And, some competitions, he says, will go all the way up until Thursday, Friday of game week. But we do feel very confident in the guys that will be playing. Who goes first or who gets how many reps will certainly be determined in the next couple of days. We do feel very confident and comfortable with who's going to be going. All right. So I think that's an interesting question right there. And this is not anything new. Like the culture that Mario Cristobal likes to create with his roster is you are playing for your spot on the depth chart all week long. Everything is earned, nothing is given. Right. With that said, obviously there are certain spots which are not gonna change between now and Sunday. Carson Beck is gonna be your starting quarterback. Francis Mauigoa is going to be your starting right tackle. Markel Bell on the left. Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor are going to be starters on your defensive line. Like these things are not expected to change, but there are so many other spots that are going to be up for grabs between now and game day. And so I wonder which competitions, you guys let me know in the comments, which competitions do you guys think are still ongoing between now and Sunday? I think wide receiver could be one of those. Like if I'm looking at a position group where genuinely we aren't 100% sure yet, or we being Cristobal and his staff aren't 100% sure yet who are going to be the starters for the first offensive play, I think receiver could be one of those spots, right? My speculation has been CJ Daniels probably a starter. JoJo Trader, who is healthy, is going to be a starter. And then at slot, man, would not shock me if Malachi Toney, even as a true freshman, is the slot starter. We will fight. I think there's going to be oars next to all those names on the official depth chart. We'll see who lines up first, because it would not surprise me if the depth chart at slot receiver says something like Ray Joseph or Tony Johnson or Malachi Toney. We'll have to see who actually lines up first. But I think receiver, because, again, you have a guy like Josh Moore that's pushing the envelope with the way he's practiced to possibly be a starter. You've had guys like Keelan Marion, who, from my understanding, has made a lot of big plays in 11 on 11, that the brighter the lights get, the more he seems to pop. Now, he's going to have a presence in this game no matter what, because he's going to be Miami's primary kick returner this year. He returned 2 of them to the house at BYU last year. We'll see how much he gets on the field at receiver. You have other guys competing who have practiced really well at times, like Nye Carr and Chance Robinson. Dalen Upshaw, another true freshman who's been pushing for playing time. So if I'm going to look at any spot where there could be potentially even a starting job up for grabs between now and Sunday, receiver is probably the first spot that I would look at there. And there could be other, less glamorous areas, because listen, when Mario Cristobal talks about his team, he's not strictly speaking on the glamour, like starting offensive positions. There could very well be special teams roles that are up for grabs. Folks, we already talked about how important things like kickoff coverage are going to be. So, hopefully we make the final decisions of who's on that field, and we make those correctly before Sunday, because we're going to need all of the contributions we can get there. I could see maybe not starting spots, but definitely depth spots in the defensive backfield up for grabs. Because I personally, and this is just my prediction, I personally will project the starters in the defensive backfield to be O.J. Frederick and Xavier Lucas at the corners, Keontae Scott at nickel, and Jacoby Thomas and Zach Poyser at safety. But there is healthy competition in the rotation from players like Damari Brown, who's really been pushing. Ethan O'Connor has practiced well, transfer corner from Washington State. Bryce Fitzgerald, true freshman safety, has looked great. Dylan Day, second-year safety. This is just to name a few. There are others, but those are, naming a handful of defensive backs that have really been pushing for prominent jobs in those rotations. So I think spots like that on the depth chart could very well be up for grabs. And, interior defensive line, we want that rotation to be deeper than three guys. Dante Simpson is a freshman who's really been playing well and working hard. Dalen Russell, a second-year guy who has transformed his body. Artavius Jones, who came out of a small high school, is becoming more polished and more disciplined out there. So I think these are some of the spots that are not necessarily all starting jobs, but important depth spots that are still could be being decided between now and Sunday's opening game. And just to note, by all accounts, and this is the biggest blessing coming out of training camp, Miami has gotten through camp about as healthy as you possibly can. Serious injuries have been completely avoided, which is, in a game like football, it's such a blessing. You're always going to have some bumps and bruises. And, anytime you hear a rumor that such and such guy might have missed a practice, the rumor mill, the game of telephone starts going crazy. But Miami has avoided serious injuries. Like you're always going to have certain guys with bumps and bruises, maybe get limited or miss a practice here and there. But Miami comes out of this training camp healthy. And Cristobal credited that to, quote, a little bit of everything. The thing that we certainly reduced are the number of soft tissue injuries. So we've been able to just maintain a healthier team overall. For the most part, I think guys are maturing as well. They recognize and understand the importance of nutrition, of rest. Sleep is actually important. Putting down that iPhone, that blue light, getting off the game system for some extra rest, getting over and getting some hyperbaric chamber treatment, some red light, all the other stuff that we never had before, right? The old ice tub used to do the trick, if that. But I think our guys understand that. I think our medical staff, our sports science staff, our spring staff together have more diligence to put our guys in the best spot they could be in physically. And also Coach Irv, the new strength and conditioning coach, from what I can tell, is doing an outstanding job. So these are the factors, the little things that can keep you as healthy as possible coming out of training camp. When we come back, I'm actually surprised at the number of experts. There are a handful. They're minority, not majority, but there are a handful of experts that are picking Miami to win this game on Sunday. But one notable expert has guaranteed victory for the Irish. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Ruget Ready. Ruget Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Ruget's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If the traditional options haven't worked, Ruget might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Ruget connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to ruget.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Ruget website for full safety information. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. I wanted to make sure I told you I would circle this early in the episode. Wanted to make sure I remember to come back to this. So, I had mentioned over the last couple of weeks that a personal concern of mine is Miami's kicking game. Okay. Because there were some reports, and just for the record, I've hardly gotten to watch the kickers at all. Earlier in training camp, when there was some media availability, we didn't usually get to watch special teams. That was not usually part of our media viewing. Okay. And then, these scrimmages that they've had have been completely closed to the media. There was a report that came out of one of the scrimmages about the kicking competition being a little bit inconsistent. You've got Bert Auburn, the Texas transfer, and Carter Davis, the FAU transfer, who are competing for place kicking duties. And so again, like, we had heard some things, hadn't seen it, but heard that maybe there are some inconsistency issues there. Mario Cristobal was asked about the kickers yesterday, and I was really glad to hear this answer. He says, we feel good about kicker. We feel really good. We invested a lot of time and effort into scouting that part, and why we went that direction with a couple of guys, and really a third got to battling it out. I guess the third was probably Abram Murray before he transferred, and we're really close there on making that decision. We feel great about the operation itself, the protection, the snap, the hold. Same thing on the punt team, about the protection, about the coverage that goes with that. Our biggest issue last year, he said, was the kickoff coverage, which we talked about. But Mario Cristobal said in no uncertain terms, he feels really good about kicker. And I guess part of the reason why we get concerned is the Borregales dynasty is over after, 5 years that felt like 100 years. The dynasty is done, and we move on. And I'm not even sure. My educated guess would be the guy kicking the field goals would be Bert Auburn, unless you're trying like a 50-plus yarder, then maybe Carter Davis. But Bert Auburn will be like your place kicker, and then Carter Davis, my guess, will be the kickoff specialist because he's got the longer leg. But to hear Cristobal say in no uncertain terms, we feel good about it, makes me feel good, because, you would hate for a game that's got a 2.5, 3-point spread. You would hate it to be decided by, Miami missing a kick. If Notre Dame wants to miss a kick, I'm all for it. But you would hate the opposite to happen. All right. So, going through, I've been combing the web this morning to see the expert predictions on Miami versus Notre Dame, and I've stumbled on a few. And I will say, like, there's more, definitely in the minority, but there are more insiders and websites picking Miami than I expected. It's like at like 30%. I thought it would be like 5-10%. Okay. So here's a few of the ones that stand out. Dimers.com, whatever that is picking a Miami 26 to Notre Dame 25. So they're predicting a 1-point win for the Hurricanes. ESPN, I think this is like their analytics machine, doesn't give a score, but they have Notre Dame with a 54.9% chance to defeat Miami. So that's what their analytics tell them. 24/7 Sports, though, Brad Crawford predicts Miami to win by a point at home, 28-27. SB Nation predicts Notre Dame to win by a point, 32-31. But let's go back to Brad Crawford and his 1-point prediction for Miami. He says Notre Dame may have to follow its same trek to the playoff this season as last, overcome an early loss and win out. He says that could be the recipe for the Fighting Irish if Miami stands up at home and carries the ACC's torch with an opening weekend victory. It would be a mild stunner given Notre Dame's rise nationally and being just a few plays away from national championship in January. Armed with Carson Beck at quarterback, Miami's new look offense will test what should be a stout defense for the Golden Domes. So Brad Crawford from 24/7 picking Miami. I noticed like there's actually a lot of writers because like 24/7 is affiliated with CBS. I guess like CBS is their parent company. A lot of people from that family are actually picking Miami. So you can count Brad Crawford in on that. One of my listeners pointed this out to me, and I verified it. Chip Patterson from CBS is picking Miami to win a close game. And I found this yesterday. Brandon Marcello from CBS Sports and 24/7 is picking Miami to win a close game at home. So a lot of people in that. See, I guess I need to be nicer to these guys. Like the CBS 24/7 family is more bullish on Miami than anyone else. So those who are not bullish on Miami, SEC Network and ESPN personality, Paul Feinbaum. Not only is Paul picking Miami to lose, he is guaranteeing Miami will lose. He was doing his Crystal Paul prediction segment on SportsCenter, and Feinbaum said, I guess he said this on Sunday, there's a game a week from tonight in Miami. You probably heard about this. It'll be the luck of the Irish as Notre Dame beats Miami. Guaranteed right here, Feinbaum said. So Paul Feinbaum, I don't know what his record is as a prognosticator, but he is guaranteeing victory for Notre Dame. I don't know, just based on some of the things Feinbaum says, him guaranteeing Notre Dame should probably make Notre Dame fans very nervous about this game. So you have that one on the record from Feinbaum, the Crystal Paul prediction. Well, the Donno Ball prediction says Miami's going to win a close game on Saturday, Sunday. And obviously we got a lot more coming up this week. In fact, later on today, we're going to talk with Mark Fletcher, courtesy of Canes Connection. Mark Fletcher is going to join us, who I think is not only one of the best players on the team, one of the leaders of the team, but pound for pound, one of the nicest human beings I have ever met. Fletcher is going to join us later on today. So you want to keep it locked right here for more awesome content. On Wednesday, we're going to chat with Rock Boys football. Thursday, we're going to do our crossover episode with Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Fighting Irish. So guys want to keep it locked all week long on Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.